Start there. John, you certainly navigated Cisco through some tough times in the dot-com bust. I mean, revenue just evaporating. And from the S1 of Airbnb, we get to see revenue drop by a third in the first 9 months of 2020 compared to 2019. But Airbnb still managed to be profitable in Q3. What does that tell investors about operational discipline there?
Well, I think it basically says that these new startup companies are running their focus in terms of free cash flow and profitability. They're here to stay. I do not agree that the high-tech companies who benefited from the pandemic in a reverse way, like the Zooms of the world, the DocuSigns of the world, the Instacarts of the world, will be affected negatively in the long run either. So I think it speaks to the next generation of major companies in America being off a high-tech foundation, Airbnb just being one example of that. Great to see you again, Carly, by the way. And John, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, it's like we're in the 2000s all over again, but in a good way. Carly, you and John both did a lot of M&A when you were CEOs, M&A large and small. John mentioned some companies that benefited from the COVID period. DoorDash comes to mind. They just filed an S1 days ago. As you look at results like these, investors are trying to pick through them and understand them now. What do you look for to understand where the long-term value is?
Well, good morning, and it's great to be with you, John, as well. Look, I think what the pandemic revealed is that there are certain habits that have changed forever. And I think Airbnb, DoorDash, Zoom are all examples of companies that are going to benefit from those changed habits. Yes, it is true that when we have a vaccine and the pandemic is behind us, people will go back to some things that they used to do. But what's not going to change is people wanting to eat what they want to eat when they want to eat it. What's not going to change is people wanting to have a meeting without having to get on an airplane. And what's not going to change is the fact that people want to go off and borrow someone's home for a lovely weekend instead of checking into a big hotel. So what do you look for? I think what you look for is what John alluded to, operational discipline and operational excellence, and a focus not just on top-line growth, but on what is required to drive bottom-line profitability. And I think that's why you've seen investors be quite encouraged by some of these S1s, because that's what it looks like these companies are doing.
Carly and John, good morning. It's Deirdre Boza here. A lot of tech news this morning. We're also keeping an eye on that judiciary hearing with Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg. John, I had to do a double take just a few moments ago when I heard Zuckerberg say that he doesn't think the research on the addictive nature of social media platforms is conclusive. He said, we certainly don't want our products to be addictive. First, do you buy that? Second, if you don't, what is the point of these hearings if we're going to let these CEOs get away with something like this when clearly that's their business model?
Oh, Deirdre, that's a challenging question. Let me break it into pieces. First is I'm a huge believer in the future of our country is going to be around tech and high tech in total. And I think it's very important as we think through regulation to understand the implications of that. The large companies, in my opinion, clearly overstep. And if you were to watch the interviews from 2 years ago, the CEOs were caught off guard. I think you now see tech understanding you have both a capitalistic objective and a benefit to society of having that balance. Carly remembers she was on my board for a number of years, and a great board member, and thank you, Carly. But when John Doerr and I founded TechNet 21 years ago to work with government and business, we had no issues for the first 15 years. In fact, we worked very close, for example, with President Clinton on his infrastructure strategy, which generated 34% GDP growth over 8 years, 22 million jobs, real per capita income growth of 24%. Where I'm leading you is I think technology companies need to work much closer with government for the very legitimate needs. And we have to be very careful of the regulation for the unintended consequences, not on the big companies, they can afford it, but on the small startups, which literally regulations done wrong can literally destroy.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.